Hi, everybody. It's CC and JT from the CC and JT Amateur Hour. Production values go to die. That one's CC.
That one's JT.
And what we're doing here on the Amateur Hour is we love to have writers from around the world to talk about the art and craft of writing, what makes them unique in the world that has millions of writers. And we've learned so much. And what we've learned really also is we may be, different people and different writers, but we have a lot of things in common. And I think Ron here is going to be another example of what makes writing such a unique craft, but also something that, like I said, we have things in common. So Ron Roman, why don't you take it away? Please introduce yourself to our audience and please introduce your book.
Yeah, okay. Hi, my name is Ron Roman, speaking from Korea, just south of Seoul, where I live, and I taught I'm a retired associate professor of English and Humanities, most recently University of Maryland, overseas, teaching the U.S. military and affiliated civilians all over the Pacific Command since January 1996. And I retired shortly after the COVID virus began. And I work part-time and on the base right now, just outside where I live at Osan Air Base. I'm a retired assistant activities director for 7th Air Force at Osan. And that keeps me busy in addition to my writing. Right now, here's my book. I'm going to talk about that predominantly today. Right there, can you see that? It's Of Ashes and Dust. And
Great.
Right there,
That's a great
the
cover.
emblem. I was a 2023 finalist for the Chanticleer International Book Award, or CIBA, and for global thrillers, and which I'm proud of. And I got a lot of good reviews. The book is on Amazon. You can buy it at Barnes and Nobles. It's also on Simon & Schuster, and you can take a look at my website if you want to have more information about me. That's www.writerronroman.com. That's www.writerronroman.com. And he's got a lot of photos and additional stuff that I've published. And by the way, my second book should be coming out, another book rather. It's delayed right now. That's A Poetic Rhapsody of the Soul by Tree Press. And I've got you can take a look also, a short story I have about veterans. I do a lot of, the impetus behind this book in part was because I was in the military myself, also here in Korea. And what I do is I work a lot of veterans and retirees who suffer from PTSD, and part of the thrust behind this book right here is about two guys who Vietnam War veterans. The book plot takes place initially in the fall of 1999, in other words, at the beginning of the millennium. And it's, as I said, it's an apocalyptic doomsday thriller. I'm going to read you a couple of paragraphs for starters, and then we can take it from there.
Yes, please.
At the time of the millennium, three people struggle for survival in a small New Hampshire town as the world spins into chaos, not realizing that each harbors secrets that will eventually pit them against one another. The story evolves from the U.S. government's earlier two classified secret projects during the Vietnam War. The United States Air Force's revelation about UFOs, which is actually true, by the way. General Brown, 1973. During the Vietnam War, the United States Air Force's revelations about UFOs and Project 67, which I made up. Striving to survive a global Armageddon with his Japanese teaching assistant, Professor Will Watson, tortured Vietnam War hero and New Hampshire Liberty militia activist, hounded by the state police and the FBI, struggles to surmount haunting Vietnam War ghost and the impending collapse of a world caving in on them. Watson must face the truth about his friendship, in quotes, with closet homosexual and militia comrade Mark Mercati, who, while in the military himself, surreptitiously had Watson placed in a top-secret Vietnam War Project 67. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of an overview to the story arc, and it's a thriller. And you can get online on my website, get on Amazon and take a look at the video trailer, and take a look on Amazon. I have a video, as well as my website. I have a video interview, and you can get a good idea what the rest of the story is about.
Okay. So excellent. So let's talk about insights and influences into what brought this book about what brought about his writing. Obviously, being an English professor, that's one thing. But I'm also a veteran, and I just finished my own kind of a post-apocalyptic series. What do you think it is about post-apocalypse books that draws writers like us to that subject matter. The fall of civilization, and then the great, the finding strength to survive these very terrible events. What is it about that genre?
Yeah, it's about that genre. Is that well? I'm going to read you a blurb I got from John Coyne. He's an author, a well-known author of over 30 novels. Of Ashes and Dust by Ron Roman is a gripping tale of post-apocalyptic survival set against the backdrop of a world spiraling into chaos, disaster, and ultimate survival. Though taking place at the time of the millennium, it's a novel dangerously close to these times. And it's the kind of world we live in. I suppose we're at the edge, and we actually live in a very dangerous era right now. With the proliferation of nuclear weapons and more stuff and the internet. When you click on the damn computer in the morning, it's got stories about where, that much closer to World War III and the Armageddon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess that's the impetus behind that as far as delving into that kind of genre, And the idea of also UFOs plays into the book, more or less as a teaser, though, because it's meant at the very beginning of the book. Mark McCarty is one of the three main characters of the book. He's a Vietnam War veteran, along with Professor Will Watson. He regales Watson with tales about UFOs, and the book came out a number of years ago, not that long ago. I was just 3 years ago now. But this is more and more in the news. That about a real government, a surreptitious and clandestine cover-up of the UFO phenomenon dating back to Independence Day 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico, which you've heard about. Actually, it happened in Corona, which is about 60 miles north of Roswell. The more and more of this stuff is coming in by official government personages like David Grush. 3 years ago, in 2023, he testified in Congress, remember, that this is real. We have alien dead bodies, and the government is keeping this secret from the rest of the world, and it can summarize it in one sentence. It's been all looked at as from a government cover-up because of reverse engineering of craft, destroyed flying saucers out in the desert. As weird as that sounds, but this is becoming more and more in the news, It's being looked at from a government research development weapons point of view. Again, a government research weapons development point of view. Whereas this is being looked at, unfortunately, to whatever we can reverse engineer from these craft saucers to improve our own military capability against our alleged, competitors or enemies like Russia, China, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Another question?
When you wrote this book, you said it was released several years ago. Was this something that you'd been working on for quite a while, or was it a pretty quick process for you?
I worked with the University of Maryland and a couple other American colleges prior to 1996 when I joined the Maryland faculty full-time. And she got the impetus for this book out in Diego Garcia, which is out in the Indian Ocean. And I taught all over the Pacific Command. It's been on a while. For my doing this book, it took me a long time, and I finally got it finished. Now, I did a lot of other writing as an academic, travel pieces, which some people read, political pieces, which not that many people read, and academic monographs, what have you, which almost nobody reads, except the editor to whom you're submitting the manuscript, of the editor at whom you're submitting your manuscript to. And I finally got to the idea as an English professor, I'm teaching about the great writers of American literature like Hemingway, Faulkner, F. Scott Fitzgerald, who's my favorite, by the way. And why shouldn't I be writing some this stuff? I'm getting tired of writing stuff that not that many people read. So, and I've got something to say, and that's why I got into that. And by the way, last April marks the centennial of what many critics consider the greatest novel in American literature, at least for modern novel. And that it was published back in April of 1925, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. By the way, he was also very instrumental in me and as my emulating my writing style after him. because I got my third graduate degree from Wesleyan University in Connecticut. I'm from Connecticut originally, and I still own a home there. I go back once a year. And he was very instrumental in inspiring me. Of course, there are other writers as well, like Stephen King. And in fact, this novel, my novel of Ashes and Dust, is somewhat similar to Stephen King's The Stand, if you've heard about that. That was 1973. It's been quite a few years now. But his book is 1,200 pages. Mine's 265, 88,500 words. So that's where I got the idea for this book, as well as being in the military myself and working with veterans and retirees who don't fit into society anymore. As my two main characters, actually three characters, but two of them are Vietnam War veterans. They suffer from PTSD, both of them, and they don't really fit into civilian society once they get out of the military, and they try to make a go of it. Will Watson is he's the narrator. He's the primary character, protagonist. He's a humanities professor, and then he finally lands a job as a full-time professor at Swenson College up in south central New Hampshire. And he meets, or so he thinks, another veteran by the name of Mark Mercati, who's a computer salesman. And then Mercati tantalizes him with tales of UFOs and government cover-ups, and some of it is conspiracy theory without much credence behind it, and other stuff is right on target. And Watson can't get enough of it. And then he, as I said, he gets this full-time tenure track position at Swenson College up in south central New Hampshire, where he meets his TA, teaching assistant, a graduate teaching assistant, Kimiko Tanimoto, and she's from Osaka, Japan. And then they have an illicit romantic relationship because it's against college regulations, obviously, for a professor to have an illicit romantic relationship with his teaching assistant, his department's teaching assistant. And they fall in love, and she gets pregnant by him, and the story takes place. And as this goes on in the following year, then the world is gradually unfolding into chaos and spiraling out of control. And one nation rises up against another nation. One tribe rises up against another tribe, as it says in the Bible. And in fact, I even referenced the Bible, but it's not per se a religious book, and it's the idea of UFOs is not, it's more of a teaser, if anything else, And one thing what happened with Will Watson, when he was in the Vietnam War, he was wounded, and he remembers lying half conscious. Let me get a drink of water here also.
So Ron, you kind of touched on what I want to ask you about. You touched on you touched a wide range of characters, which are all very fascinating. But I want to rewind a little bit to what you said about outsiders. Veterans being outsiders. And our last time we did this, we interviewed a writer who is in Costa Rica. She's an American writer. She's an American writer who lives in Costa Rica. And we asked her, pointing out that you and she have something in common. You're Americans not living in America. And so you have both this outsider view of looking back at the States and seeing, what's going on over there. But you also have your local perspective, your local perspective of the local community, like she did in Costa Rica. How did that outsider/insider view help you with your writing?
I'm not quite sure what you mean.
Well, you're both an outsider and an insider at the same time. You're an American, but you're not in America.
Mm-hmm.
So that outsiders/insider view, you probably have a unique view as what's going on with America. And I'm just wondering how that generally helped you with your writing. Did it help you with your writing, or did you find it was a challenge to put it all together? Does that help?
Got you. Yeah. That really helped me because I've lived the majority of my life outside as an adult, outside the United States. Because I've lived in Korea, I've worked and lived in Japan, North, Central, South, Okinawa, Philippines, great country, Diego Garcia and the like. And that has broadened my perspective, and I get to meet a lot more people, not just Americans from all different walks of life working with the U.S. military, Department of Defense, also with, the locals that I've lived with in countries like Korea, Japan, and Philippines, Okinawa, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, although Okinawa is actually part of Japan. And that's really broadened my perspective. Yeah, it's like that. And then when I go back to the States, another thing, when you go back to the States, you've been away for a while, you can, because when you're back in the States, you see all this tumult over the political chaos right now. The country's really culturally divided and all. And when you're back in the States, you don't kind of realize that to what degree that is, because it's like the proverbial tale of the frog, in boiling water. He doesn't know he's being boiled alive because things are happening incrementally daily, incrementally. But when I get back over there, I can see there's a whole lot of big differences because I've been away and I get a better appreciation of what's going on, you see, and to see really right now how culturally divided the country is. And that goes back to actually probably a seminal event was actually the Vietnam War, That was really an event that divided America, and we haven't really overcome that to 100%, ever since the war ended, April 30th, 1975. We're still kind of at war with each other when you think of it. It's a cultural war now, if anything.
So you mentioned that.
Question somewhat?
Yes, it does. You mentioned that you have another book coming out. Is this similar to the book that you've written, or is it something completely new?
Okay, absolutely. No, I got a book coming out. It's Poetic Rhapsody of the Soul, a book on poetry, because these poems are hibernating in this PC right here for 12 and a half years, and I just wanted to get them, out to the light of day. So that should have come out actually last year, but now my publisher, she's had some kind of problems, and she says, she's working on finishing it, and we should be out hopefully not too later this year. And then what else? In addition to that, I've got a manuscript. I'm sending out the queries on that to publishers in terms of children's literature. It's about a lost dog. It's called Cooney the Cutie, actually named after one of my dogs. And that's where I think potential sales would be in terms of revenue, because children's literature is more popular than sales is more popular than people believe. And I'll have a follow-up to that as well. In addition to that, I've got a short story that I can't market as a separate book, but it's on my website. Again, www.writerronroman.com, and it's called The Journey, and it's about a veteran who wakes up and he's experiencing amnesia. It's a short 8,200 words. It's not that short, 26 and a half pages, I think. And it tells about his. He doesn't know if he's alive, he's dead, if he's reincarnated, and he goes back and he is something like almost like in the Twilight Zone, And that's a really, I think, many people. I'll just put that on my website now. The few people that have read that, I would just not say many. I take it back, but the few people I've looked at that really are really impressed by that. I'll be submitting that to contests and whatnot very shortly as well. That originally appeared in the 2025 Navigation Anthology by Windtree Press, which would be a publisher of my second book on poetry. And that just came out in November. And now, as of February 10th of this year, I have the copyright to that. So that's my contribution, if you will. And I'll be expanding on that idea of veterans who don't fit in society. They don't know where. Some of them are really lost, and we owe a lot to them because they've given so much, and oftentimes they're forgotten by the rest of our society.
And that's an incredibly important point, because again, I'm a veteran myself, and I see what you see, that there were promises made, but there were not promises followed through. So we always have to keep that in mind. Before we segue into Act 2 of this, where we get to the set questions, could you hold up your book one more time, please? And tell us about it's a team, writing the book is a solitary thing, but it's also a team effort. Is there anybody you want to give a shout out to in the way of special attention, say, hey, you guys, you helped with this? Is there somebody you want to say thank you to?
Great question. This guy right over here on the top, you can't see it, but it's by Dr. George Guthridge. He was also a University of Maryland professor. He's probably the most prestigious English professor University of Maryland overseas ever had, dating back to 1949 in Europe, 1956, September 17, if you want to be super precise, here in Asia. And he was a one-time winner of the Bram Stoker Award, International Award, one of two winners. And he was a big science fiction writer back in the 80s and early 90s. He just passed away, by the way, this past August 8th in Bangkok, Thailand. And I got the... He was instrumental in helping me get the book started. And I never forget, this was about It would have been about 4 years ago when I was trying to get the manuscript published and everything. I went through 64 different publishers, by the way, and it's not easy anymore to get published by a traditional publisher, But he was instrumental, and he kept on telling me, you got to do that. You got to make a log line. I never heard of a log. What the hell's a log line? Because a log line is one line you do like in Hollywood for a one-sentence summary, not a synopsis of a synopsis of a synopsis, if you will. And he went over the book, and he was really good in terms of what worked and what didn't work, and he was very instrumental in helping me out. And then he gave me, again, this great blurb over here. And he says, Of Ashes and Dust is a riveting story about the American apocalypse from the perspective of a professor who, a combat vet, is a member of a militia in a small New England town. The thoughtful and eye-opening Dr. George Guthridge, winner of the Bram Stoker Award for Children at the Dusk and author of the Amazon bestseller, The Kids from Nowhere. And he was very successful, by the way. He made hundreds of thousands of dollars back in the 80s and early 90s. But today, the book publishing industry is really changed. And with the advent of AI now coming in, who knows where we're headed for? It might be the death knell for writers. I mean, every day I get this. I'm a member of the National Authors Guild, and I get on their community newsletter. And now all I seem to see are threads about, is this a scam? Is that a scam?
Yeah.
Thanks to AI, and people don't know what's real about it. And there's this very famous author, what's his name? I just read it last night. He wrote a good piece in the New York Times.
We're going to go ahead and segue over to the second act of our thing, is where we send you a set of 7 questions where Cece and I, we like to emulate James Lipton, if you may remember, inside the Actors Studio, where he would ask these celebrities certain questions. And so we'd like to ask you about your questions and help our watchers, our viewers, learn a little bit more about Ron Roman and how he ticks. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question. What was your I am an honest to goodness writer moment?
I don't know. It just came to me like an epiphany. It was almost a spiritual thing. And then I had the book was already 90%, and I had the ending done as well, which I'd like to read at the very end, a 1-paragraph epilogue, But I couldn't tie the pieces together. And then all of a sudden, I don't really have a good answer in terms of hardcore facts. Or it was just something that came to me almost it was a spiritual epiphany, if you will. And then the words just came to me, and I was writing almost feverishly in the computer lab in the main U.S. military installation here in South Korea, United States Forces Korea. It's called Camp Humphreys. And that's it. Aha, I'm done, And then came the tough part. And the tough part is submitting the manuscript with queries, writing up the synopsis, which I did, and of course the queries going out to the agents and to publishers. As I said, I went through 64 different publishers. The 65th picked me up, and there's where we are today.
That's amazing. That's actually the first time someone's mentioned the actual writing process in that, because a lot of people say that it's somebody contacted them and said they really liked their story or something. So I really like your answer to that, because it's so much more personal that you felt that as you were writing. So who would you say is your writing role model and why?
All right. I touched upon that already. I think it was definitely F. Scott Fitzgerald. When I was doing my 3rd graduate degree at Wesleyan University in Connecticut, where I come from, as I said, I still own a home there. I originally had Frank Norris for my 3rd degree, my thesis, if you would, and that was I had a professor. She was really good, and she said, "Well, you can't do 2 authors. And choose one." I chose F. Scott Fitzgerald, because his writing, if you study like The Great Gatsby, 1925, he wrote a total of 5 novels. The last one, The Last Tycoon, he actually didn't finish it. It was finished posthumously by his editor. And if you read The Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald almost sounds like a poet. I mean, he's a lyrical writer. At the very end, he's got this hell of a line where he says, we were rowing back into the future, and it's just I tell you, some of the scenes over there can almost bring tears to the eyes of a dummy. At the death of J. Gatsby. Yeah, he was definitely my role, among others, of course. But I would say a key one would be him, F. Scott Fitzgerald. Okay. He died, early, very early. He was only 44. and recovered from his alcoholism, December 20th, 1940, just before World War II.
Okay, so what do you love about writing?
Yeah, it gets a chance for me to, to say what's on my mind, and I would like to, of course, to get more readers. That's why, like, I appear on these shows. I've done a lot of podcasts before, and I like it about it. It gets the creative juices flowing, and I want to get some things out there, maybe that I have personally that I don't tell about myself. That I don't tell other people, but I get them on paper, and then people could judge me for what they want. This guy's, he's the real deal, or, just another writer.
So what do you dread about writing?
What have I read?
What do you dread? What do you dislike about
What I
writing?
dread about writing. I guess initially, I never really been one for writer's block, writer's constipation. It's more like I've got writer's diarrhea. Once I get going, I can't stop, and oftentimes. Well, what I dread is just getting going initially, and then once I get going initially, then I'm good to go, and this just seems to flow. And I've got to be inspired, though. A writer has to be inspired, because if you're not inspired, I don't know, it's going to be like an 8 to 5 routine job. You know what I mean? You got to be inspired, and you write about something that you really want to get off your chest, as a rule. And that's why, with Of Ashes and Dust, are about these 2 Vietnam War combat veterans who don't really fit in society anymore. And it's kind of it's a tragedy, but the book has something of a happy ending, which I'd like to read when we're just about finished, in a one long paragraph epilogue, and let the readers judge for themselves after that.
Well, let's get through these questions. What single significant life experience affects your writing, good or bad?
It was a single experience, but it was a series of experiences that, when I was submitting, to agents, acquisitions editors, and publishers directly, because like the Big Five, in New York City, they don't take direct submissions anymore. Unagented submissions, as the word goes in the field, since November 1990. If you want to be super precise. What it affected me was that it's like asking a girl for, hey Jane, you want to come to the date with me? No. Betty, how about you want to come to the date, to the big prom with me? No. You're just getting rejection after rejection after rejection. I think the toughest part is just to keep going, just to keep slogging on, because it took me 1 year, 11 months, and 2 weeks to finally get a contract. And that's tough to take, that rejection. I once read that Stephen King, he was rejected 38 times in a row. I think I got him beat, though. And of course, I'm not Stephen King, but it's tough. And then the field is getting tougher all the time. And the saying goes right now in the publishing world, you know what the good news is? The good news is anybody can publish a book. You know what the bad news is? Anybody can publish a book. The field is glutted with, self-published stuff that, although in my opinion, it's getting much better in the recent years than it has been before, but there's a lot of schlock there, and you're competing with other people. You don't even know if you're competing with a human being. It could be supposed AI-generated manuscript or book. So that's what we're up against today, and that's very thought-provoking and sometimes disheartening.
There's a lot out there.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Yeah, we don't know what's going on.
With all of that in mind, would you recommend the writing life to a loved one, and why or why not?
Well, I would, it depends on what you mean by writing life. I would recommend that you try it if you want to do it. You definitely, and as a copy editor, I do a lot of copy editing for other writers too. Just give it a shot, but don't quit your day job, because it's, by the way, the National Authors Guild and the National Writers Union, they come out with these statistics in the past several years, recently too, that very fewer and fewer writers, percentage-wise, are actually making, any nearly remote living off of actually sales from their writing, because the field is so glutted. And now, who knows where AI is going to be taking us? It's a real challenge for us, for sure. And just the thing, you try your best and let the chips fall where they may. There's a great line by W. Somerset Maugham, the great British writer in the earlier part of the 20th century. In the book, by the way, of Human Bondage was my all-time classic book, other than The Great Gatsby. He's got a line. I wish I got it here, but I'm not going to waste time over here to go look for it here in my computer or study room. He says, a writer shouldn't care about whether his book, his manuscript's his book sells and he should just hear that he's done his best, and after that, and I'm paraphrasing now, he lets the chips fall where they may. And that's, I think, the best attitude to take. The chips fall where they may. You try your best, and then just move the hell on.
That's right. Do the best you can. Do something that you're proud of, that you know is a quality product, and let the chips fall where they may. So let me get in this last question here before we wrap things up. What is something unexpected in your past that we won't see in your bio? Now let's have some fun with this. What is something unexpected that we wouldn't see in your bio? Something about you.
Yeah. Well, one of the things often, I guess there's a lot of stuff, but one of the things, when I was here before in Korea, back as a GI myself here under United States Forces Korea, I was stationed I was an ambulance driver, and yeah, I saw a lot of blood and dismemberment. Well, not a lot, but enough, more than I needed to see. And you're not going to see that in my bio, but that sticks with me, and that never leaves you. I don't have nightmares off of it, but it does affect you, And that life is very fragile and precious.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You can't say it any better than that. So, did I understand you say, okay, before we get to my next question, let's do this. Ron, where can we find you? You've already mentioned your website, but where can we find you at your website, and where can we find you on social media?
Okay, first of all, my website is writer Ron Roman, ROMAN, at hotmail.com. www.writerronroman.com. That's it. Social media, I got kicked off. This is a true story. You're not going to find this in my blog. That's another thing. Back, the book was published, maybe 2 months later. My publicist out in San Diego, he got me on Facebook. I'm not crazy about social media, by the way, JT.
Okay.
And he got me on Facebook. I got prominently kicked off within 2 weeks for violating community standards, and he never telling me what the hell community standards I ever violated, And
So let's take this from another direction then. Instead of tell us where we can buy your book.
Buy my book is on Amazon, Simon & Schuster, Barnes & Nobles. You can get on History of Books, HISTRIA. And, it's out there. It's out there, and there's no problem there. My book right now, the ebook is $10. The paperback is $20. Hardcover is $30. And there's an audiobook version as well. You can get that. And get on my website, and as I said, you can get on Amazon. It's the 800-pound gorilla in the book publishing industry. It's right there, Of Ashes and Dust, and it's also Simon & Schuster is also a distributor as of 1 January this year as well.
Okay, and did I understand you correctly that you wanted to close this all out by reading one more paragraph?
Yeah. By the way, I wanted to make a pitch for my copy editing too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes, please do so.
Let's talk. You want the epilogue for the book?
Yes, whichever you'd like.
Here you go. Epilogue. The silence of the night whispered to us as it crept upon the cutting edge of raw human emotion. Having survived indoors for so long, the shattering of our senses impressed upon us a premonition of promises yet to unfold. Springtime evening's transitory magic was as breathless as it was fleeting. The magic of enchanted moments that we tried to grasp somehow eluded us. In but a passing moment, time would seem to freeze itself, and in some unfathomable way, we knew that which had been real was yet an illusion. In only days, a lifetime had swept by us. Skies cleared, the nightmare that lingered over us, seemingly like an eternal ghost, had vanished. It was our time to live and to love once again.
Nice prose. Okay, let's talk about your copy editor. Let's give them some love.
Yeah, I do copy editing. I did that as a professor, but now that I'm really retired from teaching, if anybody out there is a listener, they got their own literary manuscripts that they want copy edited, or queries and synopses to be edited, or if you're not into literature, you got anything you want copy, I do that as well. My rates are very reasonable. My turnaround times are excellent, and I've got lots and lots of testimonials, and I have done this a lot for other writers on the national scene, like your John Coyne. I edited his 30th novel, the Gatsby Letters, rather, and I've done Ramon de Mesa de la Mesma, Migrant Son, Our Days of Wandering, and a bunch of other books. I don't have to get into that, but anyway, you can get in touch with me by my perhaps my best way is just contact me directly by my email, which is Ron, R-O-N, _G, as in golf, _Roman, ROMAN, at hotmail.com. And
Excellent.
I'd be willing to take a look at your stuff. Get in touch with me, we'll take it from there.
Okay, thank you. And so Cece and I would like to thank Ron Roman, the writer from Seoul, Korea, for joining us here on the podcast. The CC and JT Amateur Hour is one of two podcasts that we do here. What it is our CC and JT Amateur Hour likes to talk about the craft and art of writing, where we like to help writers write. And we have writers like Ron on all the time. So if you want to go out to our website at carsonhume.com and click on writers at the top, you can see some of the excellent people we've done. This week we had Korea. Last time we had Costa Rica. Who knows where we'll get next time? We also do, in a partnership with the Sierra Arts Foundation out of Reno, Nevada, we have the Nevada Author Network, which is our second podcast where we highlight writers in northern Nevada through the Sierra Arts literary community. And so, again, like Ron here, they are fantastic writers, and we really enjoy having them all on. But for now, we're going to go ahead and close out this podcast by saying thank you, Ron, for coming on.
Okay, CC and JT, glad to be here. Thank you.
Great talking to you.
Great talking to you. And as always, everybody take care and take care of yourselves.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.